Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Austin, Texas, and a very, very warm Circuit of the Americas. It's time to go racing in the Blue Marble Radical Cup. Race 14 of the championship. And I tell you what, things continue to tighten and heat up in the championship battle. The cars, I can hear them outside of the commentary booth, just behind the pace car and rolling out onto pit lane. And would you believe, after 13 races of this championship, Danny Dashelski, provided he starts this one, and Nick Persing will be tied on points for not only the outright championship, but the Pro 1500 class title as well. Other big news after a successful day at the office yesterday, Louis Schreiber has moved into second in the Platinum points and in Pro 1340 behind Ken Savage, who finished fourth in yesterday's race. Seth and Jace Bacon are now tied for runner-up in the Pro 1340 Championship. And given the pace of their teammate Chris McMurray, it'll be interesting to see if any team orders will play a role in this one. Of course, Chris will be looking for a win, but it could be critical in the championship battle if Seth or Jace Bacon were able to get in front of Chris McMurray and put yet another car in between themselves and their championship rival Ken Savage. We'll take you through the running order as we see Jason Plotke in that stunning 119 machine. He was unlucky in yesterday's race, led the Platinum class and indeed outright for some time until a little electrical issue, I believe, got in the way of him taking victory. We'll start at the back of the grid, and right at the back in 22nd position will be Jack Yang. He was unfortunate in yesterday's race. A first lap incident with Scott Wagner, a bit of a racing one, but it took him out. In position 20, Ralph Ludwig will make his second start in the Blue Marble Radical Cup alongside Seth Bacon. Ken Savage, we've already mentioned, leading the championship in Pro 1340, will start from position 18 alongside Ben Blander, who we haven't talked about much this weekend, but he showed good pace in Pro 1340 yesterday and will start from 17th. In position 16th, Jace Bacon alongside Arul Venkatesh, and there is a chance that Arul is not partaking in this race. We'll have to wait and see about that. Then it's Chris McMurray on the 7th row of the grid, starting alongside Scott Wagner, who we mentioned was involved in that contact. Robert Soroka, will be interesting to see what that young gun from Canada can do. He starts alongside his countryman in position 11, Austin Riley, and the two Canadians will be looking to make amends. Now, word off the grid was that Austin Riley was still suffering from an oil pressure trip, and may start from pit lane. So a couple of positions that drivers will have to readjust in this starting lineup. Greg Gorski will start from the 5th row of the grid alongside Jim Booth, and Gorski leads the Fangio title chase inside the Pro 1500 class. 4th row of the grid is Wayne Williams next to Nick Persing, who certainly has some work to do, because between him and his rival in the Pro 1500 Championship, Danny Dashelski, is Will Lynn from position 6, Elaine Dursey in P5, Louis Schreiber will start from 4th, Jason Plotke in 3rd, and then Danny Dashelski, who was second in yesterday's race, second quickest as well, will start alongside our pole sitter John Field, who was another one to have a demise in yesterday's race. But because it's lap times that set the grid, he's back in his rightful spot, if you will. And the cars lining up side by side as they head through the second to last corner here. And again, John Field bringing the field around extremely slowly. Nice and calm. And a good formation from the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America Series. It was green flag to checker flag yesterday. We'll see what unfolds in this morning's race. Slightly cooler conditions. It's going to be a hot one this afternoon for the race that features a mandatory pit stop. That delta's been reduced from 60 seconds to 35. But right now, it's a straight sprint race. And the cars line astern, side by side. You can see Louis Schreiber on the second row just having a little look. Again, very, very slow as they approach the starter's stand. And we'll wait for that green flag. Everyone anxious. But here we go. I think we'll get a green now, and indeed we do. 5 wide already. John Field with a cracking start. Jason Plotke will get into third place, and the Platinum Class cars have swamped Danny Dashelski. He'll have to be careful. Persing's coming through, so already Persing can see his title rival in front of him, and it looks like everyone else got cleanly through turn 1. It was the S's where a couple came a cropper yesterday, but so far so good. Jason Plotke there looking to make amends. Dashelski right up the gearbox of Wayne Williams, and Persing up the backside of Scott Wagner. So Persing goes through. Wagner relinquishes a spot. Clever move, because the Pro 1500 cars, the SR3s, typically faster around the twisty bits here at COTA. And then, of course, the Platinum Class cars with their SR10 Ford EcoBoost turbo engines really power down the straightaway. And that's what we're about to see. So it is Field who's converted pole position into the early lead with Schreiber right behind. Then we're back to Plotke, who I believe has Wayne Williams side by side with him. Then we're watching a little bit further back as a couple of those Platinum Class cars come rocketing up. And there's Chris McMurray with one of the faster SR10s just behind. Looks like Scott Wagner dicing there with Dashelski. And Persing, crucially, in front. Wow, so already it would appear that Persing has made a move around his title rival. So lots of jockeying for position on this opening lap. We'll see the order as they come past the post. But at the moment, John Field still in the lead. You can see the big nostrils on the SR10 machines. And it looks like Dersey's closing in on the back for third place. It is indeed Dashelski who is relegated behind Persing. And Will Lynn right in the thick of it as well. Wow, side by side, hip and shoulder. Oh, and a big moment there. That was one of the Crown Concepts cars, I believe. And we've had a spin. Dersey again for the second race in a row has looped it. On the second lap, he looks like he's got a little bit of damage. So Dersey clearly getting into the back of someone there. Now, he was fighting for position with Plotke, I believe. But he does get going again. Dersey's been known for being the last of the light breakers, but it was too late into turn 1. And a small little bit of damage on the front left, just the front splitter you can see slightly dragging. So it looks like Plotke was involved in that, because now he's nowhere to be seen behind the 111 of Louis Schreiber, who's still making good pace against John Field, and the pair of them have checked out. So the Platinum Class, with that chaos from Alain Dersey, has settled down a little bit. Wayne Williams in third place with Plotke fourth. Persing in front indeed of Dashelski in 1500. That's crucial for the championship. So again, swings and roundabouts in that one. And Persing back in the lead of the points as they stand. It's coming down to the wire in this championship. And of course, from COTA, we're heading off to Laguna Seca to join the finale of IndyCar. And that should be an absolute cracker. The Night of Champions banquet after Sunday's race. And we're looking forward to celebrating everyone's efforts throughout what has been a super tough season. Awesome racing in all three classes. Very, very competitive, the Blue Marble Radical Cup. So looking at the order. And John Field leading from Louis Schreiber. Then it's Wayne Williams, Jason Plotke, Nick Persing leading Pro 1500 from Danny Dashelsky. Scott Wagner sits in 7th, Jim Booth 8th. Chris McMurray is your leader in Pro 1340. There he is, ahead of Mr. Smoke Buddy, Greg Gorski, Will Lynn. And then we're back to Robert Soroka. So the minor places, if you will, for Pro 1500, hotly contested. Gorski, third in class. Will Lynn right behind him. Robert Soroka behind him as well. So line astern, and that's going to be a good battle to watch here. You can see it looks like Gorski's just got everyone's match at the moment. As off track is Elaine Dursey yet again. Jason Plotke still touring, I can see. But Dursey out. And the 24 Smoke Buddy Cock Oil Machine of Greg Gorski is now hunting the leader in Pro 1340. An exceptional job being done by Chris McMurray. Of course, the 1340 SR3s, 1340 designating the CC capacity of the engine, and obviously less than the 1500s. As a big dive down the inside. Oh, it has it spin, and lucky to avoid the number 5. That was our championship leader in Pro 1340. And that's Ken Savage, who's tumbled down the order. Looked like it was just a self-imposed penalty. We didn't see quite how it started. But Ken Savage feeling some pressure perhaps of this championship battle as Dursey remains stuck on the side of the track. And now Gorski goes past Chris McMurray, who's punching above his weight in the diminutive 1340cc engine car against the 1500s. But if you can just keep the road speed up around these corners, it makes a hell of a lot of difference. And now Will Lynn goes for the move. So it's still green around this racetrack as the safety crews are coming out to recover Elaine Dursey. And Will Lynn looks to get ahead of his teammate, Greg Gorski, for the final stop, or final position on the podium for 1500. Now, it doesn't look like Austin Riley has made it out on circuit. Be interesting to see if he took the start. Some issues with car 20. That's absolute disaster for the young kid from Canada. And Austin Riley starting a cause and a movement all around the world, racing with autism, really proving that it doesn't matter what issues you may be given in life, you can make the most of every moment on this earth. And Austin Riley becoming a superstar in his own right. Friends, family and fans in Australia, the Racing with Autism movement, very alive in Australia, with a number of drivers participating as well under that banner. In England too. And he came back from the UK only a couple of weeks ago after competing successfully in the Haggerty Radical Cup UK. And now Will Lynn has a good look at the gearbox of Greg Gorski. Through as well is Robert Soroka. So after a cracking start, Chris McMurray is just getting eaten up a little bit. Perhaps being relegated in terms of track position where a 1340 should be. But still great pace. And behind McMurray is Jace Bacon. So this could have championship implications, particularly if Ken Savage, with that earlier spin, remains where he is. If Jace Bacon can get ahead of Chris McMurray, it's going to be huge for that title fight. You can see there the Crown Concepts drivers, line astern. Will there be team orders at play? We know Chris has had the pace, typically, over his younger teammate this weekend. But when it comes down to championships, anything can happen. And good fights throughout the field. Just ahead of them, going into turn 11, is Gorski and Will Lynn. There they are. This is the battle for third in class. Meanwhile, it's still Nick Persing who leads Pro 1500. Jace Bacon right on the gearbox now of Chris McMurray. Not giving Chris an inch. Crown Concepts turning out some stunning looking cars and a beautiful setup in the paddock. Apparently they'll be running 8 cars at Laguna Seca. A big entry for the grand finale of the Radical Cup alongside IndyCar at the Firestone Grand Prix. And speaking of tyres, it'll be interesting to see how this race unfolds. Now the rules for the Blue Marble Radical Cup is that each competitor gets 8 tyres, 8 Hancooks to bolt on any time between qualifying and race 3. Of course, it doesn't need to be 4 fronts and 4 rears. You could change that up. And there's no sequence that they have to be used. So it could be in this race that some drivers have elected to use more rubber or use an older set and save something for the finale here today. As Jace Bacon, you can see a little wiggle and a waggle as they came under brakes there. Meanwhile, Will Lynn, it would appear, has made it past. Sorry, that's not Will Lynn. Very similar looking car. The red and yellow. These are the leaders in Pro 1500. Persing under all sorts of pressure from Danny Dashelski. Dashelski looking particularly racing. We noted yesterday how much track he typically uses. Now, like yesterday, they're coming up on one of the Platinum Class cars. In this case, it's Jason Plotke. Will Plotke be kind to the front runners in the 1500s? Dashelski honing in on the gearbox of the number 19. This is for the championship title, for the outright prize as well. And we saw how the Platinum Class car was a bit of a pawn in their game yesterday. It looks at the moment that Plotke's got enough pace to keep a little bit of gap in front of these runners. And the concertina effect into the hairpin. Dashelski closed it a little bit. They had a fantastic scrap through these corners in yesterday's race. Side by side for a number of corners. Dashelski all over the curb. Bouncing that 88 machine, prepared by Wisco Racing out of Virginia. Honing in on the Radical Northwest, number 19. The Cameron Racing machine of Nick Persing. Persing giving up a drive in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo to finish out this season and try and clinch what has been a fantastic championship battle between himself and Dashelski, and the two drivers using every last inch that has been permitted by USAC and the race director this weekend. Plenty of time left on the clock. Who will keep it calm, soak up the pressure? Who can get ahead? They're both in the brand new SR3 XXRs. proving the new edition of what is the most popular Radical ever, is just an absolute stunning improvement. The pointy end of this field, you'll notice the shark fin on the end, on the back of the engine cover, and all the drivers commenting around a place like COTA with these high-speed directional changes, the car feeling much more settled than its predecessor. Number of drivers also running the cockpit safety structure, affording the drivers a little bit more frontal protection, and that's an innovation by Radical. Right, so through shot, Jason Plotke just ahead of the number 19. Plotke sitting fourth on track at the moment in the Platinum class. The leader is still John Field from Louis Schreiber. Then it's Wayne Williams, who looks again to take another podium. Mr. Williams has come on strong throughout the season. The sprint car star has converted from the gravel and the dirt onto the bitumen. His first time out at NOLA, he shocked everyone with his prowess in the wet conditions. He commented that he was just not used to the sticky stuff from those Hankook tyres or the downforce provided from the big wings, the diffusers, and all the aero on these Radical machines. And he was at home when the car was moving around underneath him. He proved his skill again on the streets of Toronto in the trying conditions. And he was a superstar around the Concrete Canyon, finishing on the podium in all three races. He could have won one, but he had a little moment, and he was back on the podium yesterday in the Platinum class. So at the moment, on for another one. Dashelsky has just lost a couple of car lengths to Persing, who seems to have found his rhythm after having his mirrors full of that menacing black machine. Further back in the pack, it's still McMurray who leads Jace Bacon in Pro 1340. And Ken Savage, crucially, is starting to make his way back up. And there we are, the leaders in Pro 1340. Young Jace Bacon has been quite impressive. His first year of Radical Cup racing has very little racing under his belt. Very, very green when he joined Apex Motor Club in Arizona. Very green when he got into a Radical for the first time. And whilst he's made a few unforced errors this season, the pace has been tremendous. And in front of him at the moment, he's got a master, Chris McMurray, who's driven in the American Le Mans Series, LMP2 cars. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, he's also been at Le Mans. And, of course, his son does very, very well as well in the WeatherTech Series. But Chris, a masterful driver himself, and it's master and apprentice out there with Jace Bacon, who's considering his options for next year. We've heard some rumours that he might be stepping up to as Jace goes to the inside and has a look. Chris McMurray doesn't give him much room, and McMurray using all the track, but not. Go on, they're side by side now as we've got this wonderful drone shot. You can see the hip and shoulder as they go around the tight complex of 13, 14 and 15. Who will have the edge? Jace hangs it back and tries to get the undercut. Now they'll come into this high-speed sweeper that is 16, 17 and 18. And Jace Bacon taking a much tighter line. The pair side by side again. They're going to have to be careful. Hopefully the braveness of Jace Bacon. I was just going to say, hopefully that won't cause him issues, because he's shown earlier in the season he's super aggressive, but again he's come unglued. And what was an amazing opportunity to gain all sorts of points over his rival has been just diminished, and there he is in the background, the number 5 of Ken Savage, who has his own moment earlier in the race. Savage now looking at the back of young Jace Bacon and realising the pressure is off in terms of the championship points. His main rival earlier in the race is now in front of him. What a disastrous moment for Jace Bacon, and that's sort of been the tale of his season. Impressive pace, but he just doesn't have a lot of laps under the belt in terms of racing, and sometimes that inexperience just gets the better of him. You can see how hungry he is to fight for the race win. He's a young racer with a lot of talent, and he's only going north from here, but he's just got to sometimes woe it back. Meanwhile, we could see the 8 of Scott Wagner had a moment. Now, with all of that, we're looking at Will Lynn, I believe. Yeah, so that is Will Lynn. Just catching myself there before I put my foot in my mouth, because Will Lynn's car and Nick Persing's car, very, very similar, but ahead of Lynn is Greg Gorski. And the 66 of Will Lynn, long-time Radical competitor, has also raced in LMP3 and enjoys his motorsport, flies the Canadian flag, although he lives in California. And ahead of him, Plotke still tours. So, well, actually, something has happened here. So we are looking at Will Lynn, but I believe that there has been an issue. Just trying to let that catch up. No, it is still Greg Gorski behind. So again, the timing screen just providing me with a nervous moment there, because these championships are tightly fought, and every position at the moment is going to have huge implications. But Greg Gorski will be keen to get back in front of Will Lynn. Gorski really has been a star. No, and this is, now we're looking at, Persing and Dushelski. So Persing still solidly in front of his title rival. McMurray with, that would be the 21 of Jack Yang, who's had a solid run up through the field after what was a pretty frustrating day at the office yesterday. Yang not getting in a lap, started at the back of the pack. Looks like he'll be our Sunoco hard charger for this one, and he motors past with those extra CCs, the Pro 1500 over the 1340. So Jack Yang moves up another spot. Meanwhile, McMurray still ahead in Pro 1340. Take you through the order. John Fields just done a 2:11, but his best lap so far has been a 2:09.7. So at this moment, he'll take the provisional pole for the final race here at Circuit of the Americas later this afternoon. Louis Schreiber sits in second and in platinum class. Wayne Williams in third. Jason Plotke in fourth. Then we're back to the front runners in Pro 1500. Nick Persing from Dushelski. Greg Gorski sits in eighth behind Jim Booth, but he's third in Pro 1500. Ahead of Will Lynn, Scott Wagner, Robert Soroka, and then it's these men on screen, Jack Yang, Chris McMurray, who's sitting 13th overall, but leading Pro 1340. Well, in terms of the lap times, a key one as well for Danny Dushelski, because he is just a few hundredths of a second faster in terms of his fastest lap. Well, actually, no. As I say that, Nick Persing put in a quick one the last time by. So Persing would be the pole sitter in Pro 1500 with a 2:14 flat over Dashelski's 2:14.2. And that will make a 1 more point advantage for Persing. So none of these drivers can rest on their laurels. It's not just about track position. They have to get in a burner at some point during this race, put in a fast one to set the grid for race 3. Of course, the fastest lap effectively worth 2 points. 1 for the fastest lap in the race you set it, and then 1 as the pole point for the next race. So in a championship like the 1500, and outright fights that are coming down to the wire with the drivers separated by just a hair. And as I say that, down the main straightaway, the battle rages again. Here we go. So Austin Riley is out on track, but it's Persing just ahead of Dashelski, and it's great to see Riley did make the start of this one, collecting some more points in what's been a solid first season in Pro 1500. But he hasn't been able to match the pace of these two guys in front. There's no doubt that Cameron Racing, Steve Cameron, storied competitor in his own right, an amazing engineer in whatever paddock he exists, knows how to set up a race car. Of course, the same goes for Wisco Racing. And Mikey and the boys down there, they always turn out quick race cars. And that's evident with Jim Booth running in 7th overall as well in the Platinum class. Here we go, so some traffic now. And Persing commenting that when he went to the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series, the Radical Cup was just absolutely great, great practice for everything that the Trofeos had to offer, because they also feature pit stops. And practicing the pit stop here was very, very important. He was able to jump into the GT car and know exactly what to do on an in-lap. Keep it calm down pit lane. Find his box and do everything perfect to find success in that series. And now he's showing his prowess with a bit more downforce around Circuit of the Americas. Dashelski's also cleared. Riley, who gives them the respect of steering a little clear of the front runners in class. It must be frustrating for him knowing that the leaders in class are lapping him, but now he can see what they do. Perhaps a thought from Ryspec Racing and Racing with Autism to find a bit of track position near these front runners and let Austin just have a look at what these guys are doing at the lines, their braking points, how much track they're using on each of these corners. We mentioned yesterday that USAC and the race officials giving these guys a little bit more leeway than what's typically afforded here at Circuit of the Americas. But all of the drivers doing a pretty good job of staying within the bounds set by the race director Richard Tomlin, filling in for Bo Barfield. And I tell you what, this is a drive of champions for both these races, but it really will show who's got the mettle, who's able to keep cool in these hot conditions, hit their marks lap after lap. That's what makes the difference between a champion and a runner-up. And Persing, again, deciding to give up a very, very strong drive in the Lamborghini series to finish out and try and win the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America Series. Just does seem to have found his rhythm in this race. Looked unsettled in yesterday's race, and this morning he said he felt a little bit frustrated I can't exactly remember the words he used, but he basically said he had the tail between the legs after yesterday's performance and was looking to make amends. He had to do it all from further back on the grid. Got ahead of his championship rival. He's done it the hard way today, whereas Dushelski started on the front row of the grid and has fallen back slightly. I think this one's going to come down to the last lap at Laguna Seca in terms of those title fights. Plotke goes to the inside. So that's the 555, another Crown Concepts car. Ralph Ludwig, who will have to be careful and get out the way of Dushelski. Of course, yesterday made the mistake of seeing that black car of Ludwig and thinking that it was indeed Dushelski that had a moment. It wasn't, thank God. But now the Platinum Class car is in the thick of the Pro 1500 fight, and that's allowed Dushelski to close up. Around the outside, Persing tries to go. Hopefully there'll be no contact. That has given Dushelski the run he needs to have a look. Will he be on the inside of 11? They come down here. Dushelski looking to the outside, trying to get a better run onto the corner. And Persing under all sorts of pressure now. The pair are almost going to be side by side. Persing does get a slightly better run out of that corner onto the back straightaway. We'll see if the slipstream works for the 88 machine. What can Dushelski do? He was so impressive at the Radical World Finals, the inaugural ones in Las Vegas last year. We're looking forward to seeing some of these American drivers head off to Portugal in about a month and a half's time to join the best from around the world, starring alongside the European Le Mans Series in a huge weekend for the Radical World Finals. But right now, all eyes are on Circuit of the Americas. This stunning Formula One facility. You can see the elevation change into Turn 1, the big viewing platform. Persing using everything he's got to regain a little bit of a buffer over his rival. Again, right out to the line they go. John Field still leading this race from Louis Schreiber. And in the Platinum class from Wayne Williams. Very, very impressive Wayne Williams. Doing it for S's Racing, the hometown team here in Texas. And they're also running cars in the Porsche Sprint Cup Challenge Series this weekend. A big weekend of USAC racing with the USF Pro and USF Juniors as well. And great to see a number of drivers coming from the Radical ranks and populating some other series, doing very well. Jordan Missig here, a Radical Cup alumni. And some others as well. Austin Riley having a look back in the backer shot there on the Platinum class car. But Dushelski's having another crack. He gets very close, under brakes, into turn 11. It just seems that he's giving up a little bit on the exit though. And has the quick win of gaining a couple of car lengths. But I think he just needs to pull back his braking zone just a little and focus on the exit. Of course, a huge straightaway here at COTA. And you can see the strength of Persing's exit carries him all the way down the straightaway. Dushelski is very, very good under the brakes, mind you. Last of the late breakers, you could say. But these guys proving they are superstars of the future. And if you've got the copybook open, note down Danny Dushelski, Nick Persing. I'd also probably note down young Jace Bacon as well, because for his lack of experience, the pace that he shows, you know at some point he will have the pedigree as well. I tell you what, in terms of pedigree, there are some older drivers in this field that know how to steer a motor car. John Field, a former American Le Mans Series champion. Louis Schreiber, a perennial front-runner in the Blue Marble Radical Cup. He's won the 1340 championship. In fact, he did that at Laguna Seca a few years ago. Recipient of the Jeff Green Memorial Award. Louis has shown a tremendous amount of camaraderie in the past. He actually gave up a spare car to his title contender during the season that year, and gave young Gustavo Raffles an opportunity to duke it out in Utah when Raffles had an issue. Raffles, of course, as well, a former Blue Marble Radical Cup champion and outright champion, both in the 1500 class and as we mentioned, outright. And Raffles is another one to be rewarded with that drive over in England, racing at Silverstone, making his debut across the pond. Meanwhile, Greg Gorski's still ahead of Will Lynn. And Gorski trying to hold down third behind these two. Looking back at the timing screen, Chris McMurray is still ahead of Pro 1340. The 200 machine. Chase Bacon is back in second position, although as we know he was fighting for the lead. It'll be interesting to see what happens there, whether or not again Jace will be able to get in front of Chris. Any point he can clamour over Ken Savage is important now. And these drivers completely on the outside of the curbing running into that final corner, but you can see it really did unsettle the 88 of Danny Dashelski. And a number of notes in the drivers briefing just mentioning to the coaches and the drivers for that matter that it's not always optimal to use more than the track surface. There is a difference, if you will, between what's permitted by race control as opposed to what's optimal. And I think sometimes these drivers just picking off or biting off a little bit more than they can chew on some of these corners. You see Dashelski, it lost him time because his car got upset trying to get back over the backside of the curb. And a couple more car lengths lost to Nick Persing. So Jace Bacon in turn 20, 21, I think is starting to reel in the his teammate Chris McMurray, and the white flag, well, there was a white flag out, so we're about to wrap up race 2 here of the Blue Marble Radical Cup. John Field touring. And after a little gremlin yesterday curtailed his chances, John Field has put in yet another championship winning performance. He leads the Platinum class by a lot of points. And you can see why, keeping it calm, using all of his American Le Mans championship winning experience. This guy used to fight and beat the factory Audi team with his own privateer effort. He's a fierce competitor, is John Field from the Nashville region. And in front of him is the number 5 of Ken Savage. But right now, he's on his final tour here at Circuit of the Americas. We're under 2 minutes. We expect the checkered flag to come out next time by for John Field in the 37 for One Motorsports out of Las Vegas. They do more travel than any team I've ever known. Jeff Schaefer, Cameron Rodriguez, and the guys know how to turn out a quick radical sports car. They've been doing it for years. In fact, used to run one of the early iterations of the Radical Cup. Jeff Schaefer looking to take John Field to Portimao to duke it out with the best of that Europe has to offer in those World Finals. And I think he's going to be a contender for those World Finals this year. One Motorsports unlucky not to win it last year with Indiao Miller, who showed pace against the young guns, but ended up runner-up. Right now, though, it's the 37 One Motorsports machine that comes across to take the Sunoco checker flags here at Circuit of the Americas and take a win in the Blue Marble Radical Cup. Another one for John Field. Congratulations to him. Hopefully we'll see Louis Schreiber take another podium position in just a moment, because he is going to come through and take second place. And there he is coming around the second to last corner. So Louis Schreiber will take second in the Platinum class. And another strong day at the office for Rhino Racing. And Big Blue Swim. Louis Schreiber takes second. Now we're looking for Wayne Williams. The local fans will go wild. S's Racing out of Austin, Texas. Wayne Williams, the Canadian, who now lives in the US, goes around the final corner. And here's Nick Persing in front of Danny Dashelski. So it'll be Plocky who picks up fourth in class. Persing goes to the inside and pumps his fist because he's taken the win in Pro 1500 from Dashelski. The championship battle swings back in his favour. And Jim Booth will come across the line, fifth in class in Platinum. Greg Gorski, congratulations to him and One Motorsports. He's taken third in Pro 1500 from Will Lynn. And Robert Soroka again on the podium in Pro 1500. Now, what's going to happen between Chris McMurray and Jace Bacon? Where is the 200 machine? Trying to pick them up. So Soroka goes past on the start-finish line. So who will come out? Will it be a white and yellow and grey car? It is indeed. So Chris McMurray will take the win in Pro 1340. Jace Bacon in second. And Ken Savage, who was lapped there by John Field on the last lap, is in third place. So not a bad day for Ken Savage. And that really keeps a little bit of a buffer for him. He's lost 5 points to Bacon, but he's still in the hunt. Ben Blander, solid result for him. Fourth in class in Pro 1340 and back to Seth Bacon. Well, what a cracker that was. And we've got one more to go in the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America Series later today at Circuit of the Americas. Hopefully you'll join us from around the world on the live stream at the Radical Motorsport YouTube channel. Of course, if you want to check out more about these amazing machines, just head to radicalmotorsport.com. And it's easy to get involved in Radical Racing, whether it's at the track day, the country club. They are the preeminent car at the country clubs around North America. Of course, they're also a fantastic car for SCCA and NASA Racing. Very competitive in Thunder Hill as well. Radicals have won that with the 1340, would you believe, against LMP2 machinery and LMP3 machinery for that matter. But for now, we'll go to the podium and celebrate John Field, the winner in the Platinum class. Nick Persing, the winner in 1500. And Chris McMurray, the winner in 1340. That has been race 2 from COTA for the Blue Marble Radical Cup North America.